Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I apologize for being late and I hope my voice is audible. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. There was a there was a problem because I was actually speaking for the last 5 minutes and I think the connection hadn't gone through. So we are going to restart. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to chapter number 2. Lavina, welcome. Pratham, welcome. Arvind, uh, Vishal, Aditya, Mugdha. Mugdha, I was not sleeping. I was awake at 6:30 a.m. and I thought the connection had started 5 minutes back. Murtaza, no, I was not sleeping. Tejviz, Divij, welcome. Pratham, welcome. Mayuresh can attest that I had wished him good morning around 45 minutes back. Prajwal, thank you all so much for joining in. Today is week number 2 of our reading of Bhagavad Gita, and last week we completed chapter 1, and today we intend to complete chapter number 2. We are going to try to finish 18 chapters in 18 weeks so that in 2020 we complete reading the Bhagavad Gita. We are going to start off like we started last week with the Bhagavad Gita Dhyanam. It is a verse that we use to invoke the blessings of Bhagavad Gita and hope that we can finish it and understand all the lessons that it has. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshiniം Bhagavatim Ashtadhyashaധ്യായിनीം Amba Tvamanusandathami Bhagavat Gite Bhavadveshinim. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Atha Shrimad Bhagavad Gita Dvitiyodhyayah Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga is the name of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and the translation is Yoga of Knowledge or Yoga of Analysis. An interesting thing I read about the word yoga is that it is considered to be the science of connecting the individual consciousness with the universal consciousness, which I felt was important to think about, because as we go ahead with reading the Bhagavad Gita, we may understand this in a deeper way. The 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita have been divided into 3 sections. So the first 6 sections is called as Karma Yoga, which is the yoga of action. The next 6 is Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of devotion. And the final 6 is Jnana Yoga, which is the yoga of knowledge. And each of these 3 paths are considered as different ways of merging your consciousness with the universal consciousness. We will remember this, and as we go ahead with reading the Bhagavad Gita, we will try and correlate what these mean. That being said, I hope you're all having a wonderful morning so far, and let us begin reading chapter number 2. I hope that you all have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita with you, and if not, then I will share the screen and you can read it from here. However, I do encourage everyone to get their own copy because it helps. Chapter number 2, verse number 1. Sanjaya Uvacha Tam Tata Kripaya Vishtam Ashrupurna Kulekshanam Vishidantamidam Vakyam Uvacha Madhusudana. Sanjaya said, Seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana, that is Krishna, spoke the following words. Shri Krishna, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Kutasatva Kashmalamidam, Vishame Samupasthitam, Anaryajushthamaswargyam, Akirtikaram Arjuna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not at all befitting a man who knows the value of life. They lead not to higher planets but to infamy." If you remember from the first chapter was all about establishing conflicts. It spoke about Arjuna having a conflict of fighting and killing his relatives who are on the other side of the army, his enemies for that fight, and also the conflict of him being a family man and how he believed that family is the bedrock of society. And if he kills family, isn't he destroying society as a whole? There was also the conflict of King Derashtra, who, despite being the king and having so much invested in this fight, he couldn't participate because he was blind, and so he was back on his throne. There was also the conflict of Dronacharya, who was on the other side of the army with the Kauravas, and he was the teacher of both sides, and so he had to fight his own pupils whom he had taught. So that was another conflict. There was also the conflict of Duryodhana, who was the leader of the Kaurava army, and he was aware that a lot of members of his own army might have preferred the Pandavas, such as Dronacharya and Bhishma. So he was aware that this could be a potential conflict. So chapter number 1 was all about establishing the different conflicts, and if you remember, we had discussed how there are different identities that each person goes through, and all these conflicts are when one particular identity clashes with another identity. So that being said, coming back to verse number 2, here finally Krishna has started speaking, and Krishna is asking Arjuna how he has come upon these conflicts, and they don't befit a man who knows the value of life. Now, I think somebody, Krishna Mohan Shwankar, has just said that it was titled as the war within, the chapter number 1, which is exactly what it did sound like, because these are all conflicts that go inside someone's mind all the time. Now, coming to this translation, I realized that different books and different authors have translated the Bhagavad Gita, and there are slight variations to the way the translation has been done. So, for example, this is a Vivekananda translation, and in this, the translation of the second verse goes like this: "Whence hath this dejection befallen thee in this perilous strait, ignoble heaven closing infamous, O Arjuna?" The overall context remains the same, but the words they use differ. I'll highlight this only once, just to show that you can read multiple translations of the same verse and come upon slightly differing meanings. But the concept remains the same. Let's move on to verse number 3. Klaibyam masmagama partha naitat tvayupadpatyathe naitat tvayupadpatyathe Shudram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktvottishta parantapa. O son of Partha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. it does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. Krishna is telling Arjun that this confusion that he is going through, it is very unlike him. So Arjun has always been renowned as a warrior, somebody who is excelled in fighting, and this is not what is expected of him. Verse number 4. Arjuna uvacha katham bhishmamaham sankhye dronam cha madhusudana ishubhi pratiyotsyami pujarha varisudana. Arjuna said, O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counter attack with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona who are worthy of my worship? The conflict remains that Arjun feels that he cannot kill people who have taught him, who have helped him grow, and who he respects so much, and who he finds worthy of worship. How can he kill them? Text number 5. Guruna hatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhaikshyamapihi bhaikshyamapiha loke hatvartha kamastu gurunihaiva bhunjiya bhogan rudira pradigdhan. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with blood. Arjun is thinking of the consequences of his action right now. Even if he does this, even if he goes ahead and kills his relatives, and even if he wins the war, at what cost? What are the consequences of his actions now? And eventually, will the consequences be worthwhile? Would he later think that, why did I do this? It is better to have not done it at all. That is the conflict that Arjun is going through. Text number 6. Na chaitad vidma kataran nogaryo. No, I'm going to read it again. Na chaitad vidma kataran nogaryo yadva jayem yadi vano jayeyu yaneva hatvanu jijivishama yaneva hatva na jijivisham masta jijivishamas yaneva hatva na jijivishamaste vashishta pramukhe Dartharashtra. So that was a struggle. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Derashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. The sons of Derashtra are the Kauravas, and Arjun has come there in order to fight them. But at this moment, when it's finally time for action, which is what this entire section is called, now he is hesitating because now he is thinking of the consequences of his actions. Text number 7. कार्पण्य दोषोपहता स्वभाव पृच्छामि त्वां धर्म सम्मूढचेता यच्छ्रेयस्यान् निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. When one is faced with conflict, the way our brain works is that initially there is anxiety, then there is panic, and then there is a sense of giving up. And at that time, you will clutch on to anything that gives you hope, anything that gives you guidance, you will clutch on to. And Arjun, it seems that he has reached that stage. He went from anxiety to panic to despair, and now he is just reaching out that help me, I am not able to make up my own mind. Although that is not his identity, which is what is interesting, because his identity has always been somebody who is a very accomplished warrior. But now, almost for the first time in his life, he is now faced with a situation where he cannot decide, and so he is reaching out. Nahi prapashyami mamapanudha dacchokamucchoshana mindriyanam avashya bhumavasa patnamriddhum mriddham rajyam suranamapi chadhipatyam. I can find no means to drive away this grief which is drying up my senses. I will not be able to dispel it even if I win a prosperous, unrivaled kingdom on earth with sovereignty like the demigods in heaven. He is saying that even if I win, even if I get that kingdom, even if I have everything that I wanted, what if it was not worthwhile? Because this grief of killing my family members will make it all seem pointless. So when we say the ends justify the means, Arjun is questioning that the means don't justify it, that what he is now being asked to do is going to destroy his own sense of identity. And so if his identity is broken, then even if he gets what he wants, would it matter? Because now he is no longer that person. Text number 9. Sanjay Uvacha Evamuktva Hrishikesham Gudakesha Parantapa Na Yotsya iti Govindam Uktva Tushnim Bhabuvaha. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, the chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I will not fight, and fell silent. So this is where Arjun gives up. He says that I will not do what is expected of me. I will not do my duty, because he is there as a fighter. But he is now given up because his other identities are clashing with this. And so he said he will not go ahead with this. Verse number 10. Tamuvacha Hrishikesha Prahasanniva Bharata Senayorubhayor Madhye Vishidantamidam Vacha. O descendant of Bharata, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both the armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. So now Krishna has the responsibility of speaking with him. Krishna, if you remember, has been assigned as the charioteer of Arjuna. So the story goes that they could choose between Krishna himself and Krishna's armies, and the Kauravas picked Krishna's army to fight for them, and Arjun picked Krishna. So that's how Krishna ended up as Arjuna's charioteer. And I thought that after every 10 verses, I could have a word with you guys and see what you feel about the discussion so far. Divij, so Sid will read Sanskrit followed by English translation and discuss it. Uh, Mohini has said that that is what the Gita teaches, to overcome mind and follow duty. The other side won't hesitate to kill Arjun. Wasim, yes, you're right. So that is part of the conflict, that the consequences of his actions are so diverse. So if Arjun doesn't fight, the immediate consequence is that his enemies will not hesitate to kill him. But the long-term consequence is that Arjun is giving up his own identity, and so even if he wins, what is the point? Because now he is not that same person. So this is by no means an easy conflict to resolve. Divij said that maybe then the other side is not thinking in this direction at all. Also remember, they also have conflicts, but their conflicts are different. Absolutely, because everybody's identities are different. So the same conflicts may not apply to everyone. And Aishwarya, is it actually worth it? That is what Arjun is asking, and that is the question that Krishna is expected to solve. So let's get back to text number 11. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Okay, can you pause? There is a lot of noise. I'm going to stop the stream for a second. Hi, welcome back. I apologize for the sound. I'm afraid that that cannot be helped at the moment, but we will still try to focus and continue our reading. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Ashocyananvashocastvam vadanshcha bhashase gatasunagatasumchva gatasunagatasumscha nanushocanti pandita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So Krishna is saying that what Arjun is conflicted about is something that does not deserve conflict. Krishna is asking, why are you thinking like this? Why are you overthinking? I think somebody had mentioned. Why are you overthinking? And those who are wise, or those who have understood the nature of things, they don't find this as a conflict. They don't think that worrying about living and dying is something to be conflicted about. Text number 12. Natvevaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadipa na chaiva na bhavi syama na chaiva na bhavishyama sarve vayamata param. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So Krishna is saying that when you say that you are going to kill the Kauravas, you are assuming that the Kauravas will then stop existing. But he is saying that there was never a time when I did not exist, when you did not exist, and all these kings and all these enemies of yours did not exist, and these will always exist in the future as well. So I have thoughts about that, but we will continue reading and let our understanding form as we go ahead. Text number 13. देहिनोऽस्मिन् यथा देहे कौमारं यौवनं जरा तथा प्राप्तिर्धीरस्तत्र न मुह्यति. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. And now we are into reincarnation, because there is no other way to look at this. What Krishna is saying is that the soul passes after death from one body to another, and right at this stage I would like to share something that I believe that there are certain concepts that are understood in a particular way, and one of them is the soul. Now it is something that we seem to instinctively know what it is, but we are not able to put a finger on it scientifically. We are unable to exactly describe what it is. And so when we say a soul passing from body to body, in our imagination we can see it, and we are familiar with the concept of reincarnation, but when we talk about it from a scientific perspective, it is difficult. And so right at the onset, I would like to share how I interpret it. I believe that we are talking about energy, and if you think about it from a very fundamental sense, I believe that in the universe there is energy getting transferred from everything to everything. So heat to light to sound to biological energy to photosynthesis to plants to us to words to actions. And I believe that when you mention soul, we are talking of transfer of energy. And I won't touch upon this again. We will continue reading it, and everybody is free to make sense of it in their way, because that is how it is supposed to be done. But I thought I should just give you context of how I see it. Text number 14. Matra sparshastu kaunteya शीतोष्ण सुख दुःखदा आगमापायिनो नित्या नित्यां स्तांस्ति स्तांस्ति तिक्ष्व भारत स्तांस्ति तिक्षस्व भारत. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O sign of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. He's talking of the constant change of emotions initially, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, which sounds a lot like happiness is a scam, and their appearance in due course, like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer. So as if happiness and sadness are just waves that keep coming and going, just like the seasons, like summer and winter, and they arise from sense perception, which is very, very true from even a neuroscientific perspective, because we hook our emotions of happiness and sadness very closely with what we sense. So if we see someone we like, you get a dopamine rush. If we see someone we dislike, we get that burst of anger. But neither that happiness nor that anger would have come if you weren't seeing. So emotions are very closely linked to senses, what we see, what we perceive. And in a way, what we see is being analyzed in our brain in different ways. So if you look at this from a neuroscientific perspective, sense perception is what leads to happiness and distress. So if you cut off all senses, there is no happiness and distress. And so one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed, is that sense of detachment. So you detach senses from yourself, and so you are actually detaching emotions from senses. Text number 15. Yam hina vyathayanyete, yam hina vyathayantyete, purusham purusharshabha, yama dukkha sukham dhiram, yo mritatvaya kalpate. O best of men, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. So the idea is that somebody who has detached his emotions, his or her emotions, from the senses, and so whatever is happening on the surface, all the senses that come to you, all the things you see, hear, touch, if all those things aren't directly linked to your emotions, and you are not finding yourself very happy, very sad, depending on all the things that are happening on the surface, then that is liberating. Text number 16. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, abhayorapi drishtontastvan ayostattvada ayostattvardashibhi. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Now this is very interesting, because we are talking of the body, which is the biological form. So your bones, your muscles, your nerves, your cells, your blood, your organs, and all of these are degradable. We know that as a fact. And when we say the eternal, again, if we speak of energy, then in all the things that you have consumed, all the energy that is there in your body just gets converted into another form, because energy is transmutable, but energy cannot be destroyed. Eventually there is entropy, but in the short term, energy only gets transformed from one form to another. So again, I think that is what this means. Text number 17. Avinashitu tadvidhi yena sarvamidam tatam vinashamavyaya यस्यास्य न कश्चित् कर्तमर्हति न कश्चित् कर् न न कश्चित् कर्तुमर्हति. That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. That which pervades the entire body, which the only thing that pervades the entire body is energy, because that is what is converted from cell to cell. That is what is transferred from cell to cell. So what we eat, what and all that energy that comes from food, and that gets transported to every part of our body. And probably that is what the meaning is, that no one is able to destroy that. Text number 18. Antavanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirina anashino prameyasya tasmadhyudhyasva bharata tasmadyudhyasva bharata. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. Krishna is saying that what you are seeing, the people that you are seeing, are biological forms, and those biological forms will perish. Whether you kill them or not, those biological forms will perish. But what is not going to perish is the energy in them, because that energy will just get transformed into something else and something else, and that cycle will keep continuing. So fight, so do your duty. Text number 19. Na enam veti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam abhautau na vijanito nayam hantina hanyate. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge, for the self slays not, nor is slain. So Krishna is saying that if you think that you are someone who kills, or if you think that you are someone who is killed, then neither of you really know what is going on, because the real you, the energy that is you, can neither kill nor can be killed. Okay. Text number 20. Na jayate mriyate va kada chinnayam bhutva bhavita vanabhuya ajo nitya shashvatoyam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. For the soul, there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, nor does come into being, nor will and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval or primal. He is not slain when the body is slain. Something that doesn't have a beginning and no end, from a science perspective, we think that the beginning is the Big Bang, because we don't know what came before that. But what we do know is, from the Big Bang, which is I think 13.8 billion years ago or something, from the Big Bang there has been energy. And if you look at what happened from a physics perspective, energy has been continuously transforming from form to form. So energy getting converted into mass, energy getting converted into light, energy getting converted into electromagnetic waves, into gravity. Everything is transformation of energy. And I believe that that is what is being said here, that for the soul there is neither birth nor death. It has not come into being, it does not come into being, and will not come into being. It's unborn, eternal, ever existing. Okay, so let's read what chat is saying. Divij has given Guru Dakshina. Divij, that is very nice of you. She shared, yes, it is BMC, I'm afraid that the noise is coming from. This is what detachment is all about. I think so. I think that essentially detachment is when you disconnect your senses and your emotions and stop reacting to every change in your external environment. Because if you're very closely connected, then everything will trigger you, everything will gaslight you. And if you are detached, then your emotions are no longer linked to external events. Energy can never be created nor destroyed. Perception is biased truth, Mugda. Yes, that is true. Is it really a good practice to detach and do things without the joy of doing? That is one of the fundamental questions that we need to answer, because even in Buddhism, this is the I believe this is what is advised, that you disconnect from desire. Unfortunately, our motivation is also linked to desire. So if you disconnect from desire, then why do anything? What will motivate you to do anything? Now in Gita, there is a slightly different way of looking at it. Gita says do your duty without looking at the result, without seeking, without having desire, which is, at least it gives you a sense of purpose, but then it removes that sense of joy that you will feel from doing things. So but that sense of joy is coming from your limbic system, from your emotions, because you have linked it with the outcome. So it is kind of a circular thing, that if you want one, you will kind of need to have the other. But I think it is good to understand this from a different perspective and then take your time with this. Himanshi, if Arjun is going to kill, aren't all these emotions valid? Why is he expected to feel nothing? Divij has answered, my perception is that there is a difference in feeling and being affected by emotions. Feeling emotions is okay, but letting them affect you and drive your actions is the issue. Divij, that's a good point. The idea of would you let your emotions come in the way of you doing what you have to do, versus would you be able to feel them and stop it there, just feel them because they exist? That is an interesting point. Let's move on. Text number 21. Veda vinashinam nityam ya enam ajamavyayam katham shapurusha partha kam dhatayati hantikam. O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, and unborn and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? So Krishna is asking Arjuna that if you know that the soul cannot be killed, that it will always exist and it has always existed, then how could you even think that you are killing someone? It's a tricky concept to wrap your head around and then go back to your everyday, because that dichotomy, that binary does exist, because we will see this in a different plane, and it will take some time before we can apply that plane to your everyday events. Text number 22. Vashamsi जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान्यन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So here, an interesting thing that is happening is that we say that the soul will go from body to body, but when we hear that, we think that we go from body to body, which is not true, because when we think of we are talking of identity, and when we talk of identity, we are talking of all these material things, because who you are is very much your biological self. Everything that you identify as you is very much your biological self, because your name is a sound that your parents gave you, your body is all organs that are going to degrade, and your job is a construct, your relationships are constructs. So everything that you identify as you is going to get degraded. But the soul, which if we talk of energy that is in you, will not be degraded, because it cannot be, and so it has to go back to the universe, or it will continue remaining in the universe because we are a part of that system, and it is going to get translated into something else and something else. So yeah. Text number 23. Nainam chindanti shastrani Nainam dahati pavaka na chainam kledayantyappo na chainam kledayantyapo na shoshayati maruta. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. So it's saying that nothing can affect that energy, because it, even if something were to affect it, that energy would just change form. It cannot be destroyed. Text number 24. Achedhyoyam adhahyoyam akledyoshosya evacha nitya sarvagata stanur achaloyam sanatana. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can neither be burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. Text number 25. Avyaktoyam achintyoyam avikaryoyam uchyate tasmo devam vidintvainam nanushochitum marhasi. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. It occurs to me that these verses are written many centuries ago, and there are a lot of things that we know now that would have been known but in a different way, because you can approach the truth and you can see the truth, but you will perceive it with your available words, with your available concepts. So if two people see the same thing, but somebody is born in 2000 BC and somebody is born in 2000 AD, they will see the same thing, but they will perceive it differently because of the available words and the concepts that they have. And so, if somebody were thinking about the universe and how the world works and how the mind works, and if the available words that you have are soul and mind, then you will try and describe the truth in the terms of soul and mind. And it's interesting to see if we could describe it today with our available words, which is the brain, which is the frontal lobe, which is the limbic system, and also in terms of physics, which is entropy and energy and transfer of energy. And maybe in another 200 years, when we understand dark matter and dark energy, and we begin to get a grasp of what that really is, then again when we come back to read the Gita, we will understand it in a different way, and we will use different terminologies to describe the same thing. That would be an interesting thing to see. Text number 26. Atha chainam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tathapi tvam mahabaho nainam shochitta marhasi. If, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life is always born and dies forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. Okay, so now Krishna is saying that even if you don't believe this, even if you don't think that the soul is eternal, and you think that people do take birth and people do die, even then you shouldn't face this conflict. Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmadapari haryethe natvam shochittu marhasi. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. So Krishna is saying that those who are born will die. And so thinking about birth and death should not be the cause of you questioning your duty and you not fighting and killing your relatives. Okay. Text number 28. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyaktanidhananyeva tatra ka paridevana. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their internal state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? So all created beings, which is all of us, are unmanifest in their beginning. So manifestation is when energy takes shape, energy takes form, which is a body or a tree or an animal or anything. When it takes a form, it becomes manifest. Basically, when energy is converted to mass, it is manifest. And when energy is not converted to mass, it is not manifest. And that cycle will always continue, that energy getting converted to mass and mass getting converted to energy. That cycle is always going to continue. So why worry? Text number 29. Ascharya kaschidena kaschidenam आश्चर्यावद्वतति तथैव चान्य मन्य शृणोति श्रुत्वाप्येनं वेदन चैव कश्चित्. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So we perceive energy in different ways. We see it, we hear it, we touch it, but and we find wonder in it. But sometimes, even after perceiving it and finding wonder in it, we may not really understand what it really is. Text number 30. Dehi nityamavadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat tasmat sarvani bhutani natvam shochitumarhasi. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain, therefore you need not grieve for any living being. Okay. The exchange of energy is happening between animate and unanimate, non-animate matters too, Aditya. Definitely it is happening between animate and inanimate objects. So every time you step on the ground, you are transferring some energy. Every time you touch a hand on a table, you are transferring energy, because there is transferring of pressure, there's transferring of weight, there is transferring of heat. Every time you speak, you are transferring energy because you are giving out sound waves, and light is getting reflected off of you, and you are absorbing some and you're reflecting some. So there is continuous transfer of energy all around you. So that cannot be changed. You cannot escape from that because you are an inherent part of that system. Text number 31. Swadharmamapi chavekshya na vikampitumarhasi dharmyadhi yuddha shreyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. I feel that in this verse there are some things that are changed in translation. I think I will go back and read this verse from a different source as well, because there are certain words that are contextual. So your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know there's no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. I'm very curious as to know what religious principles was taken in context with. So I think I would like to go and read another translation of this verse. Text number 32. Yadrachya chopapannam swargadwaramapavritam sukhina kshatriya partha labhante yuddhamidrasham. O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. So Krishna saying that the fighters who get such an opportunity to fight are happy because they believe that doing their duty will open the door to heavenly planets. And here again, the concept of heaven and hell are ubiquitous across all religions. This concept lies, and from a science perspective, from a neuroscience perspective, and from what we have read so far as well, the idea of going to heaven and going to hell is contradictory, because as soon as your biological form is degraded, your identity goes with it. So by definition, you cannot go to heaven because you cannot exist beyond this. Your energy can get transferred into different forms, but your identity ends here. Your identity ends with this construct. So the idea of you going to heaven seems like a contradictory statement for me. Text number 33. अथ चेत्त्वमिमं धर्म्यं सङ्गामं न करिष्यसि तथ स्वधर्मं कीर्तं च हित्वा पापमवाप्स्यसि. If, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. So, Arjun has this identity of being a fighter. He has taken it on himself, and he has improved upon that identity, and he has become a good fighter. Now, if he says that he will not do something that his identity requires of him, then he would lose his reputation in that sphere. And this is again interesting, because you take on these identities. Now, at that time, identities were given as part of a family tradition. So if you are born in a fighter family, then that identity is bestowed upon you. In today's time, identity is something that you choose, more or less. So you choose the kind of job you want to do, you choose the kind of person you want to be, and to varying degrees you have choices. But once you do choose that identity and you make yourself known as that person, and then you don't fulfill that identity, then you lose your reputation, because people will identify you as that. I think this is something that is relatable. Text number 34. Akirtim chapi bhutani kathayishyanti tevyayam sambhavitasya cha kirtim ara chambhavitasya cha kirtir marana datirichyate. People will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. So now we come back to certain foundations that society is built on. And in the first chapter, we talked of family and how family is a fundamental pillar of society. So I think here we have reached the second pillar of society, which is honor. So everybody has to do what they set out to do. Everybody has to do their duty, because that is one of the fundamental principles on which society is built. Because if somebody says I will do this and they don't do it, then, and if everybody does that, then society cannot function. So honor and the power of word is given a lot of importance historically and even today, except now everything is legalized and we have to sign papers. But even then, trust is a very, very important concept in cooperation. Without trust, you cannot cooperate. So I think that is what is meant here, that because Arjun has picked up that identity and said that I am a fighter, and now if he comes back on it, then he will lose not just his own identity, but society will view him differently. Text number 35. Bhayadranaduparatam masyante tvam maharata yesham cha tvam bahumato bhutva yasyasi laghavam. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the field out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. Again, we are talking of social perception. What society will see you as, and how will they perceive your motivation. So Arjun is not fighting because he doesn't want to kill his family and he doesn't want to shake the foundations of society. But Krishna is saying that if you don't fight, also you will shake the foundation of society, because now you are disrupting something even more fundamental than family, which is trust. So society has trusted you to be a fighter, and if you break that trust, then aren't you shaking foundations of society by not fighting also? He is good. Avachya vadanshcha bahun vadishyanti tavahita nindantastva samarthyam tato dukkadaram nukim. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? Social feedback is the strongest guide to behavior, and we are the way we are and we behave the way we behave because of continuous social feedback. None of us are the way we are entirely out of choice. So we have tried multiple personalities and society has shaped us to become this person, because every time you step out of line, society will gently guide you, and sometimes not so gently guide you back. So social neglect or social outcast is a very powerful tool to guide your behavior, and Krishna is saying that society will consider you as an outcast if you don't do your duty and if you betray society's trust. Text number 37. Hato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va bhokshyase mahim tasmaduttishta kaunteya yuddhaya kritanishchaya. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. If you do your duty and you die, there is no harm done, is what Krishna is saying, that you will attain the heavenly planets. I've already spoken of the fundamental conflict with this line, but I believe that the concept of doing your duty was so important from a social perspective that this was underscored again and again in many different ways, that karm karo, follow your dharma, do your duty. It is put at a very high pedestal. People who do their duty, people who are honest, people who show up are highly respected, and there is a reason why, because that is social feedback. If you don't respect them, if somebody comes on time and you don't respect that, then what is the incentive for them to come on time next time? So every time we do something that is good for society, society will reward you. And doing your duty is the biggest form of help that you can give to society. And so Krishna is saying that if you do your duty and you die, you will still achieve what is good for you. Text number 38. Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labhau jaya jayau tatho yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papama vapsyasi. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by doing so, you will never incur sin. So now we introduce the concept of sin. By not doing your duty, you are not just not helping society and betraying their trust, but you are committing a sin. And sin comes with its own set of punishments. So that is another way of guiding behavior. Text number 39. Esha dhebihita sankhye buddhir yoge tvimam shrunu buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. Thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. O son of Partha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. So it's almost like Krishna's quoting scientific studies, that this is all the things that I have told you that has been confirmed, that has been proven. Now let me tell you things. What is the advantage of you working without thinking about results, and how it would free you from that bondage. Text number 40. Neha bhikramana shosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Okay, let me read that again. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution. So in doing work without thinking of the results, you don't lose out on anything. And even a little advancement, so if you start doing this even a little bit, it can protect you from the most dangerous type of fear, which is probably fear of failure or fear of not achieving what you want, or fear of judgment. All those things will come when you think of the result of your actions. And if you work without thinking about the result, then you are free of that fear. Okay, let me see what you guys are saying. Lavina saying, doesn't everybody have multiple duties to the variety of identity? You are a son, teacher, friend, etc. How can one weigh one duty more than the other? Lavina, that is very true, and that is exactly the conflict that Arjun is facing, because in another identity he's a family man, in another identity he's a dancer, in another identity he's a husband. But I think what is happening is that it is time dependent, it is situation dependent. And so in this situation, he has come there with the promise, he has assured society that now I will be a fighter. So he has not gone there with the identity of a husband, he has gone there with the identity of a fighter. And so if he does not fulfill that identity, he is betraying society. Whereas there will be other situations where he has the identity of a husband, and there he can betray society in other ways. but this is not that time. I think that is what it means. uh, Prerna saying that this is dangerous for social conscience. What if a murderer feels that he is not killing the soul but only the body, which is anyway material? What keeps the sanity of society if everyone detaches? uh, Prerna, that is very true. And the reason that that is not going to happen is because of society. So there is a reason that social cooperation exists, and there is a reason that we are not all living our own lives so that this doesn't happen. So there is nothing fundamentally wrong in going and killing everyone, except that society will collapse. And society does not want that, which is why part of the feedback that you get is don't kill. And if you still go and kill, then society will have its counter checks, and you already know about all the counter checks that can happen if you cross that line. So the way social structure is made is so that people don't cross that line. But for us to think that understanding this will lead to that, I have my doubts. I don't think that is going to happen. Vikram has said the same thing, that the social feedback that murderers get works as a deterrent. I'm going to read a couple of more comments. He triggered Arjuna's amygdala by talking about sin and punishment. Krishna was manipulating, changing Arjun's perception. Vasim, that is an interesting way of looking at it. The way I see it is that everything is changing your perception. So when I'm talking to you right now, I am changing your perception, because if I weren't talking to you, your perception would be something else. You would be getting in different senses. So everybody is changing you. You can talk about it in different perspectives. You can say manipulating, because every perception is affecting your brain in some way. Your phone is manipulating you. The sun is manipulating you, because it is affecting your perception. And it all depends on how much control do you want to take over on your perception. So whatever amount of control you want, you can have that, and the rest of it you are being manipulated. So that is how sensations work. And so Krishna talking is going to affect Arjun, definitely. Okay, text number 41. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha karunandana bahushakha hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched. Okay, many branched. So those who are resolute in purpose, that this is what I want, and their aim is one, so they are not conflicted, their identity is only one thing, compared to those who are irresolute, those who are have multiple identities at the same time and who are constantly conflicted between ye karna hai ki ye karna hai, that their intelligence is many branched. Now I'm not sure how to interpret this many branched translation, because I think that what they're talking of is attention, because intelligence and attention is very, very closely connected. And the more conflicts you have, the more your attention is divided, and we have limited amount of attention at any given time. You can increase your attention, but at any given time you have a fixed amount of attention, and the more you divide it, the less each one gets. So the intelligence that you can give to each action will reduce. So I think that is what this means. Text 42 and 43. Yami mam pushpitam vacham pravadantya vipaschita videvadarata partha nanyadastiti vadina kamatmana swargapara janma karma phala pradam kriya vishosha bahulam bhaugaishwarya gatim prati. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. Okay, so I have not read the Vedas, but from what I know, the different Vedas and the different Upanishads talk about different aspects of life and how to how to do different things in life. And definitely there are certain uh, verses and certain aspects that say that if you do this, then this is the result you will get. And so if you want to get these results, then you should do these things. And here Krishna is saying that that is a small way to look at it. So you are looking at results, you are looking at the short term gain and sense gratification, which is it reminds me of the marshmallow experiment where uh, kids who are able to delay gratification say that I don't want this sweet right now, I will hold on to myself so that later on I get a better result. um, in a way, in a small way, it is also delayed gratification. And Krishna is saying the same thing, that if you are going to go for sense gratification every time, then you will say that this is life, living in the moment, feeling all the pleasure I want right now, right here, that is life. But Krishna says that is a short term way of looking at it. Text number 44. भौगैश्वर्य प्रशक्तानां तया पह्यत चेतसां व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धि समाधौ न vidhiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So, if you are constantly in chase of sensory happiness, things that make you feel happy, and if that is the only guide to what you want to do, then it is difficult to detach yourself from that and look at the big picture. The idea of resolute determination for devotional service to the Supreme Lord, I would like to read again. I think I will read it from a different place. Because, or probably we will talk about this more in the chapters 7 to 12, which talks of bhakti, which is something I'm very interested in understanding, because what is devotion? What is bhakti really? And why is it such a powerful thing, and why does it affect the brain so much? Would be a very interesting topic to discuss. Text number 45. Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna Nirdvandvo Nitya Sattvastho Niryogaschema Atmavan. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. So now he's talking of duality. And duality is a very interesting concept, because in the brain, everything is instinctively perceived as dual. We have two hands, our phrases are on the other hand, see the other side. Everything is in binary, us or them, you or me, you and me, black and white. We think of everything in terms of either or. And the what Krishna is saying is, if you free yourself from this duality and say that this can either make you happy or sad, and you free yourself from that, then you are actually freeing yourself of anxiety, and you are then going slowly into yourself, which also, I believe Shankaracharya was the one who spoke about singularity and Advaita. I'll have to read about this, but this is again a very important point of duality and singularity. Text number 46. Yavanartha udapa Yavanartha udapane sarvatha samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanata. All purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. All the purposes of the Vedas can be served. So, Vedas talk about how to achieve immediate gains, how to achieve material gains. And Krishna is saying that even if you don't read that, and even if you learn the bigger purpose, the concept behind the Vedas, if you learn that, then you will automatically get all the benefits of knowing the Vedas. Which is very true even in academics, because you start off with learning definitions, and you start off with learning classifications and how to manage each individual problem in medicine. But eventually you begin to get an overview, you begin to get an idea of how things work, and then suddenly it doesn't matter if you're talking about the lungs or the kidneys or the liver or the brain, because you begin to understand that fundamentally it is the same processes, the same the same fundamental inflammation and the same fundamental blood flow, and the same principles apply everywhere. So you don't really need to think about each different organ separately, and you begin to get an overview. And that happens for everybody who has studied medicine for long enough. And it's almost as if that is what Krishna is saying, that you can learn how to do each individual thing, or you can learn the concept behind it all and then extrapolate it to everything you want to do. Text number 47. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karmaphala hetur ma karmaphala hetur bhurma ta sanghostva karmani. I'm going to read this again. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala hetur bhur ma te sangostva karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. I believe this is one of the most famous verses of Bhagavad Gita, because I've heard this said in many places, and this sort of sums up what we have been talking about. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. And this is fundamentally, it seems wrong because you feel that you've done something, you deserve the action, you deserve the results of your action. But Krishna is saying something exactly opposite, that you can just do what you can and you have no entitlement to the fruits of the action. Do not consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. The only way I can see this and make sense of it is that you are a part of that energy system. So when we say that I did it, that I is a construct that you have, that has been created. And when you say that I moved my hand, what is actually happening is that there are electric signals firing in your brain that go into the muscles of your body and make your muscles contract. But those muscles are contracting because of energy gained from eating plants and animals, and that has been broken down into energy and used up. And there are decisions that are being taken in your brain that we are not even aware of consciously. And so, how much of your action is you, and is there even a you? So you are just in flow, you are just a part of the energy system, and things are happening through you. In a way, that makes sense, but again, very difficult to come from this back to the everyday and think about what to make for breakfast. There is a gap, and it is also because of the way we are trained to think. Our brains are wired to think of reality in a particular way and think of identity in a particular way, and this is very away from that sort of thinking. But we are here to learn another way. We are here to learn about an alternative way of looking at reality, and so I think that this is a very important phrase to come back to later. Verse number 48. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tatkwa tattva tyaktva dhananjaya siddhayasi dhayo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Perform your duty equipoised, Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So Krishna says yoga is that balance, the balance between detachment and doing your duty. So we link action to emotion. We link action to what would it give me, how happy it would make me, how much dopamine would hit my nucleus accumbens. That is our primary parameter of comparison of how much do you want to do this. If it's not hitting, if it's not releasing dopamine, I don't want to do it. But Krishna says that if you detach that, if you remove that whole limbic part and just focus on the PFC, now what? Why would you do anything? What is your identity? What is your motivation? What is your action? And if you are able to detach this concept of success and failure, which is very much linked to emotion, then you can find a balance, and that is yoga. Text number 49. Durena ह्यवरं कर्म बुद्धि योगात् धनंजय बुद्धौ शरणमन्विच्छ कृपणा फलहेतव. O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender into the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Oh my God. There is so much context here, and I I will eventually would like to learn Sanskrit and try to understand the word themselves, but the way that this is translated is that there are these words here. So abominable activities. So what does that mean? In the context of this conversation, if you are not keeping balance, if you are attaching too much emotion to your activities, then that would not be something you want to do. Devotional service, we will have to understand what is devotion in the first place. What does that mean to feel devotion? And conscious surrender, this is something I like, conscious surrender. So you are aware that you are uh, giving something up. So you're giving emotions up for this higher purpose, and so you will feel that difference. And those who enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. I would like to know exactly. Kripana is the word that they said are misers. So those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Let's get back to this. I'll Let me think about this. That what exactly is the context of this word? That miserly means I won't give up. I don't want to share. And probably when we say that I want to enjoy the fruits of my labor, that means we are claiming ownership of that. We are claiming that this is mine. I don't want to give it up. But the previous verse said that it is not yours. It is part of the energy system. It is something that gets created through you. And so if you go and attach yourself to it, then that would be miserly, and that is not something you should do. Okay. uh let's see. Now we have reached 50. So there's 22 verses to go. Flute in the background. Mugdha, no. Every morning somebody comes and plays the flute outside. I think they're selling it, but today it's uh, it's been a nice change to hear it, and I'm learning to ignore the BMC sound. Um, a lot of text point. Kuldeep is saying a lot of text point towards the feeling of I, through which you are aware of your thoughts and body, both of which change through time, but the I staying the same, the knowing of your thoughts. Yes, so I think that the idea of self detached from identity would mean energy, because if you remove your biological self, all that remains is transferable energy that is going around. Kuldeep has asked, what is your opinion on the idea of soul and enlightenment, samadhi, which is often referred to as the grand realization that you are not the body but something else? I think samadhi is something that we will get to. We will talk about it. Duality means there is an I and there is a you, but Advaita means there is one source and everybody has the same source, so intrinsically no one is good or evil. Vivek, I think you are right that singularity and Advaita does talk about that we are all coming from the same energy source and there is just different manifestations of that energy, which makes complete sense even from a physics perspective, because like I said, everything is different versions of that energy. Okay, let's move on to text number 50. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukrata dushkrite tasmad yogaya yujyasva yoga karma sukaushalam. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad actions even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. Which is the art of all work. So, art requires a particular level of detachment, because when we are too focused on something, then you can't see patterns, and art requires you to see some patterns in some way. And the art of work would mean seeing patterns in work. And so the more patterns you see, the more balanced you are, because imbalance comes when we only see patterns on one side, and everything has to mean only one thing. But the more patterns you see, you realize that everything can have multiple meanings, and so naturally there is a sense of balance, because you know that this could be interpreted in multiple ways. And the art of yoga, or rather the art of work being yoga, is sort of the detachment of your work from good and evil. Okay. Text number 51. कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि फलं त्यक्ता मनीषिणः जन्मबन्धविनिर्मुक्ता पदं गच्छन्त्यनामयम्. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead. I'm beginning to think that when we talk of devotional service to the Lord, I think what we are referring to is an awareness that everything that we are doing is for this bigger purpose of the way the energy system is constructed. So think about this. This has been going on for a long time. 13.8 billion years is a long time. And that wave of energy getting continuously transferred from form to form to form, to stars, to planets, to earth, which forms gravity, and then water molecules forming oceans, and then finally nitrogen, hydrogen forming proteins and amino acids, and forming DNA, and then forming organisms and bacteria and animals, and then finally us, to you and me, talking and discussing this. This wave of energy has been going on for a long time, and it is going to go for a long time. Just knowing that you are a part of this, and that everything that you do is a part of this energy flow, itself is liberating. Because then you learn to detach yourself a little bit and become aware that this is all the things you do, everything you do, irrespective, whatever, is part of that flow. And you can only help. You cannot stop it. You cannot harm it. So do whatever you want. You will not come in the way. But if you do help, then you are flowing with the current. You are not swimming against it. Because if you swim against it, you won't get far, because of the sheer size of it. I think that is what devotion means. I think that is what devotion to the Lord means, because it is awareness of where you are in the grand scheme of the flow. Yeah. Text number 52. Yada te moha kalilam buddhirvya tita rishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. Once you are out of this, once you are aware that this is what is happening, then suddenly small pieces of sensory perception they won't lose meaning, because I don't think anything loses energy, but you definitely get perspective, and you can become indifferent to things. Text number 53. Shruti vipratipanna yada sthāsyati nischala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogamavapyasi vapsyasi. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. I think Krishna is again saying that if we go away from the aim of doing things for material gains, and we move towards awareness of self in the grand scheme of things, then you are reaching closer to divine consciousness or universal consciousness. Text number 54. Arjuna uvacha sthita pratnyasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava sthitadhi krim prabhasheta kimasita vraje takim. Arjuna said, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged with transcendence? How does he speak, and what is his language? How does he sit, and how does he walk?" So now Arjun is sort of asking what you guys are asking, in that how can you go from there and still be in everyday life? What does that mean? What does that person look like? If somebody has attained that level of consciousness and knows that we are a part of the universal scheme of things, then what? How does he walk around? How does he go to work? Which is a very relevant question, because that is what chat has asked about. How do we merge that with the everyday life? Shri Bhagavan uvacha prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushta sthita prajnastadocyate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness." I love this line. All varieties of desire for sense gratification which arises from mental concoction, which is so true. Your brain makes it up. When you sense something, when you see a tree, that tree is broken down into millions of photons, and your occipital lobe puts it together, and your temporal lobe calls this a tree. And if you have never seen a tree before, you won't call it a tree for sure. It is possible that you may not even see the tree, because our brain tends to see things that you know and ignore things that you don't know. So you may not even see it if you don't know what it is. And in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, there was a phrase called "somebody else's problem," which is the easiest way to make something invisible is to make it somebody else's problem, so then you won't see it, your brain ignores it. And here, when Krishna says that all varieties of desire for sense gratification arises from mental concoction, and if you give it up, you detach from that need for sense gratification, you are purifying yourself. And so now you are finally, for the first time, becoming aware of yourself without sense gratification. So who are you without the things that you see? Who are you without the things that you hear? Who are you without your name? Who are you without your job? Who are you without your hobbies? Then you are detaching yourself. Text number 56. Dukkeshvanudvignamana sukheshu vigataspruha Vitaragabha yakrodha sthitadhirmuniruchyate. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Basically, somebody who is detached from the limbic system. So, a PFC detached from the limbic system is a sage of steady mind, because everything is coming from there, and it is a very, very inherent part of the human experience. But if you can detach yourself, then you have a steady mind. Text number 57. Yasarvatra Yasarvatrana bhisnehastat prapya shubham Yasarvatrana bhisnehastat prapya shubham Nabhinandati na dvishti tasya prajna pratishtita. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. So if you keep working and you achieve everything, but you are not affected by the consequences, if you are not affected by who is praising it and who is despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. Now, this is in conflict with social feedback, because if you don't care what other people are saying, and if you are only doing things because it is your duty, but that duty itself arises because of what society has told you, there is a, I may not have understood this one perfectly, because here I think there is a conflict here, because if you are not going to be influenced by society, then what is your duty? Maybe it will get clearer later. Yada samharate chayam kurmunganiva sarvasha indriyani indriyarthestrebhyas tasya prajna pratishtitha. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. As a tortoise draws its limbs within the shell. So you are literally pulling yourself back from your sensations. You are pulling yourself back from all your perceptions, and that is perfect consciousness. Which is so ironic, because for your everyday, consciousness is defined by what you sense. So if you can't see, hear, touch, taste, smell, then are you conscious? Are you, when you say, are you conscious of this? What is this? There is no this. If you don't have senses, then you can't sense anything. So you can't be conscious of anything except yourself. So you are literally removing everything else, and all that is left is your conscious self. Okay. Text number 59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharyasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste of sense object remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Oh my God. Okay. So the embodied soul, so basically your energy can be restricted from sense enjoyment. So you will feel the taste, but you are not linking that perception to emotions. And by detaching perception to emotion, you will then experience that sense in a higher way. So if you're eating a cake, you can feel the cake, you can taste the cake, but you're detaching the sense of enjoyment that you get from eating the cake. And in doing so, you will feel a higher taste. Oh, this I have to try, because I have never eaten a cake and not enjoyed it. So that would be an interesting experiment. Text number 60. Yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschita indriyani pramathini haranti prasabham mana. The senses are so strong and impetuous, Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. This is true. Your senses are everything. You can only be distracted from one sense by another sense. You can never detach all your senses because you've never done it consciously. Sleep mein hota hai, but never when you are conscious. And so the senses are so strong that they can carry away the mind, even if a man is determined to control them. Even if I say that I will not feel anything, it's not possible. I will hear that drilling, I will see the screen, I will feel the chair I'm sitting on. You cannot really detach it easily because it is so inherently linked to who you are. Again, probably the million years of head start that the limbic system had is an advantage, but your PFC cannot really detach all your senses. Okay. Aniket is saying, I'm not sure I agree with all of this. This is kind of opposite to Zen Buddhism, where sense experience is everything. Once you're fully present with your senses and your mind, that is pure consciousness. That is interesting, Aniket. So be in the moment is another way to look at it. Be aware of what you are seeing, be aware of what you are reading and tasting. And if you are eating the cake, be aware of the enjoyment that it gives you. But that is also interesting because as soon as you say be aware, you are detaching. So it is not so contradictory, because Zen Buddhism would also say be aware of it, but that means you are detaching yourself from the person who is enjoying. Whereas if you weren't doing Zen Buddhism, you would just be eating the cake and going, oh wow, I love this so much, this is so great. But if you are following Zen Buddhism, you are detaching yourself and becoming aware that you are enjoying so much. So every spiritual thought will sort of involve different versions of this, different versions of detachment and self-awareness and going away from emotions. So even awareness of emotion is step one of detachment from emotion, because if you are angry and all of you is angry, then you cannot detach. But if you are aware that you are angry, then that is step one. And step two is being able to control it. And step three is complete detachment, that I am not angry. My limbic system may be angry, but I am not angry. That is step three. So I hope that makes sense. Divya just said that I'm going to start reading the autobiography of a yogi, and this makes me interested and excited. Yes, that would be interesting. Hinduism is all about detaching yourself from worldly pleasure. Yoga takes you there in several steps, samadhi being the last. Prakta said, I enjoy the disturbance. Prak, that is very yogic of you. Okay. We have reached chapter 61, and now we will finish the chapter and then discuss. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta asita matpara vashehi yasyendriyani tasya pratnya pratishtita. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. So by me, I think he's referring to the cosmic energy, the universal consciousness. And one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, detaches from the limbic, keeps the limbic under control, and focuses his consciousness, so focuses his attention on the cosmic energy, is a man of steady intelligence. Text number 62. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangastheshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bhijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. The object of the senses. So if you see a cake, you might want the cake, and wanting is what leads to anger, because you have now become attached to something that your senses have perceived, and that could be anything. It could be an animate object, it could be an inanimate object, but then attachment comes. So attachment means want. Want means I want to own this, I want to consume this. And if you have that, then anger is inevitable, because at some point that is going to go away, that is going to be taken away from you. And so it is very linked. Text number 63. Krodhodbhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibhrama smriti bhramshat buddhinashat pranashyati. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So Krishna is saying how everything arises from the senses. You sense something, you perceive it, that will lead to attachment. Now that you've perceived it, you want it. If you want it, you get angry because that will be taken away. If you get angry, your thinking gets clouded. So now you are completely deluded. You are unable to detach yourself at all. And then once you are unable to detach yourself, there is bewilderment of memory. So memory has a lot of connotations. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. So you may have known that this should not be done, but if you're angry, then you cannot remember these lessons. You cannot remember that you are supposed to detach, and so intelligence is lost. Intelligence is lost meaning your attention is gone, and if your attention is gone, then you are again into that whole phase, because now all your senses have a control of you, because you don't have attention. So your attention is not fixed, so it will go wherever your senses take you, and so you are again caught up in that loop. Text number 64. Ragadvesha vimuktaisthu vishayanindriyaicharan atma vasyairvidheyatma prasadamadigachati. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So a person free from all attachment and aversion, So I want nothing and I'm averse to nothing. So I want nothing and I hate nothing, and I'm able to control my senses. So what I am perceiving, I am able to control it through regulative principles of freedom, can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So complete mercy of the Lord is again a context. Because what does mercy of the Lord mean? In when we try to make sense of it, what would mercy of the Lord mean? If we are going to think of the Lord as the universal consciousness, that is the energy flow, then the only way I can think of is that you are no longer fighting the current. You are instead, you are rising above it. And so you are able to utilize all that energy for you. So it is going to support you. That all that flow of energy is now going to be on your back. It will now carry you forward instead of you fighting against it and exhausting yourself. If you are able to detach yourself and rise above, then you can surf, and you can surf that energy wave. Text number 65. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajayate prasanna chetaso hyashru buddhi paryavatishtate buddhi paryavatishtate. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. So, somebody who is now detached from the sensory perceptions and that loop of wanting, anger, delusion, memory loss, if you're detached from that loop, then you are aware of the big picture, you are aware of the grand scheme of things. Then the threefold miseries, I'm not sure if they've covered it, what is the threefold miseries of material existence, but this does not exist any longer. And so in such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. So then I'm guessing that this is not an overnight process. This is the it is going to take time to establish it. Text number 66. Nasti buddhira yuktasya na cha yuktasya bhavana na cha bhava yata shantir ashantasya kutha sukham. One who is not connected with the Supreme can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. So how can there be any happiness without peace? One who is not connected with that consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. Once you are aware that the consciousness of what is the universal consciousness, where we are in the grand scheme of things, then you have a steady mind. But if you are not aware of it, you are constantly getting pulled by all sensations, all sensory perceptions, everything you see, everything you touch, that can detach your attention and take it somewhere else. So then there is no peace of mind, because you are constantly chasing something or the other, and without that there is no happiness. But this happiness is again a contradictory thing, because you are not chasing happiness. Text number 67. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano nuvidhiyate tadasya harati pratnyam vayurnava mivasbhasi. vayur vayurnava mivambhasi. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even on the roaming senses on which the mind focuses, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. So even any one of the senses, so even when you're trying to focus, it could be a sound, it could be something you touch, something you see, and that is enough to distract you. So if your attention, and this is what we are talking about, make no mistake, we are talking about attention. And if your attention is focused on something, it is like a leaf, and any one of those senses can make the leaf fly away. So it is a matter of practice how you do learn to focus and ignore sensory perceptions. Tasmadhyasya mahabaho nigrahitani sarvasha indriyani indriyani indriyanindriyarthemyas tasya prajna pratishtita. Therefore, mighty ones, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. Text number 69. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyate mune sa nisha pashyato mune. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-control, and the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. So by day and night, if you look at it from the perspective of knowledge and becoming aware of the true nature of things, then what is night for all beings would be when everybody else is still sleeping, so everybody else is still unaware. If you are self-controlled, which is also a process, because attention is very, very difficult to control, because like we spoke about in learning to learn in attention, everything will distract your attention, and it is closely linked to the limbic system. So your limbic system will transfer attention to anything that it thinks is threatening. So your attention is going all over the place, and for your PFC to focus that attention on one spot, and it again comes back to detach your limbic. That's what all these verses talk about. If your PFC learns to detach your limbic and gain control of your attention and not let every sense sway that attention, then gradually there is a time of awakening, which we can't even speak about right now, because I don't know what it is like to have that much control over attention, because my attention is flitting every time the phone rings, every time there is a message, my attention is flickering. So I don't know what this time of awakening would be like, but when you do have that, majority of the people would still be sleeping, would still be caught up in that cycle of sensory perception. But this is interesting. The time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. So by the time everyone else realizes that this is the way things are, the sage is already asleep. Or is that samadhi what is being referred to? Maybe they're talking of samadhi. Text number 70. Apuryamanam chala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yudvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sa shanti mapnoti na kamakami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Incessant flow of desires, constant bombardment of sensory impulses, continuously. Your parietal lobe is constantly getting stimulated. This is there, this is there. They are speaking to me, they are talking to me, this person is touching, you are eating something. Constant bombardment of sensations are like rivers into the ocean, and that ocean is getting filled, but it is still, so that doesn't change. But if you focus on the rivers, you can't really explore the ocean. It does make sense, because that is what is happening, because your uh, every time you touch something, there is a spike in your electrical activity. Every time you're eating, there's constant spikes in your electrical activity, and uh, it is definitely not still. It is always in flux, and the reason it is in flux is because of external impulses and your own thoughts continuously running. So if you want it to be still, you can either sleep and you will achieve that stillness for some time, or you can detach, which is so much more harder. Okay, text number 71. Vihaya kamanya sarvan puman sharati ni nispruha nirmamo nirahankara sa shanti madhigachati. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. At this point, you start to question whether do you want real peace. Because if you talk about giving up everything and free from desire and all sense of proprietorship, so you own nothing, and false ego is identity, so you are nothing, and that is real peace, then maybe you don't want real peace yet. There is a time and place for everything, maybe, and it's probably good to know that this is what needs to be done, but in no way does that mean that it needs to be done now, or it can be done now, because I don't think that your networks can really do that immediately. You have to get there. Text number 72. Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati Sthitva Syamanta Kalepi Brahma Nirvana Mrachati. This is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. So, the spiritual and godly life, what Krishna is saying is that there is detachment, and after detachment, you are no longer confused. You are free. You have attained real peace, and if you get there, then you can enter the kingdom of God. And I'm not sure what kingdom of God means in this context, because for now the way I see it is that energy will go back to the system, and yeah, I still don't understand this part, and I think that covers the discussion. I will finish it by reading the final verse, and then we can discuss. Om Tat Sat Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Sankhya Yogo Nama Dvitiyodhyayah. Om thank you all for being a part of this. Uh, um, let's see what we have completed the second chapter. Tejviz, yes, I'm very happy, and I'm very happy that you all could be a part of this and you participated in the conversation. Parul, I believe learning can start with just curiosity. Once you hit that plateau, you need to help get over that. Gita cannot have multiple interpretations. Steve Austin, um, Gita cannot have multiple interpretations. So, when you say Gita, you are referring to verses, but those verses are also sensory perceptions. So, you are perceiving those verses, and anything that you perceive can have multiple interpretations, because everyone who perceives them will interpret them in their way. So unless you have the what Gita is trying to say coming from inside you, it is going to be a perception. You are going to read words and you're going to hear someone explain it, and if you hear someone's interpretation, then you are interpreting their interpretation, and this is a cycle that you cannot escape from. So as you learn and as your experience changes, and depending on where you are coming from, you will put information together in a particular way. And we are trying to learn the Bhagavad Gita so that our knowledge base increases, so that we look at other things in different ways. Steve Austin, I think you are really need to read Sri Krishna's life, studying the translation by having. Okay, wait, let me go back on the chat. Mugdha, thank you, Sid, for these insightful, brilliant, beautiful sessions, and also low-key fixing our sleep cycles. It's my pleasure. So I will share my Discord channel link below the description. I don't think I've done that here, but I will share it below, and we can continue this conversation in Discord. We have a separate chat room for this. Electronics engineer Abhishek, yeah, I think we can keep professional identity out of this chat, because we are trying to detach here. In everywhere else we will find all sorts of attachments, but I think this is a good place to practice detachment, even if we can't do it for the rest of the day. But here, let's practice detachment. So let's not really think about if you're an electronics engineer or a computer engineer, the ISKCON version is not the true Gita. Steve, why Siddharth reading the ISKCON version of the Gita? Well, that's because I had, and I primarily wanted to read the verses and I wanted to read the translation, but that is why I showed the two other kinds of interpretations, because I just wanted to highlight that everyone interprets the verses in different ways. So the Vivekananda version is different, and apparently there are 6 schools of thought. I was speaking to somebody who is an expert, and he was telling me that the Advaita translation of the Bhagavad Gita has different connotations, and every school of thought will give importance to a different aspect, which is absolutely fine, because that is how we are. That is how human beings are. We interpret things in our own way and we try to make them fit into our existing biases, and we try to change those biases, and so the next time we read it, we'll interpret it differently, and that is how you learn. So I think that is absolutely fine, and not constantly fighting the energy is itself a mercy of the universe. Absolutely, I think so too. Steve, ever reading this chart makes you wonder if Hindus ever read their scriptures. Being angry is not the only way to motivate. Anger at yourself can be motivating. If I don't get angry at myself, I don't have clarity. So we have lived with emotions for so long that we have all figured out ways to hack them. So we've all figured out ways to hack our fears. So the reason that we study before an exam the best is because of panic. And some people have hacked into it and said that I'll finish it on the last day because I know I have panic, and so I can study the whole day and I can study all night. But that is when our PFC is using the limbic system for its advantage. But here we are talking of detachment. So you detach yourself from the limbic system, so it makes it more difficult, to be fair. It makes it more difficult because now we don't have the support of the limbic system. So we are saying none of this matters. No emotions matter. So now for you to do anything, you have to draw energy from yourself. And that is difficult. And that is difficult to sustain. But that is what consciousness means, I think, from what I'm reading here. That everything has to come from your sense of awareness, from a conscious self. It is not happening just like that. So maybe that is an interesting way to go ahead. Neuroscience and Bhagavad Gita. Well, it is interesting because I am reading it, not anyone else. So I will read it, and if I don't incorporate my experiences, then I'm not doing it right. So if somebody is a computer engineer and they're reading the Bhagavad Gita, and if they don't think about how this fits in with their worldview and their existing state of mind, then I feel they're not doing it right, because that is how you make it work. And as you grow, you will keep changing, and the way you read it and the way you fit it will keep changing, and that is fine. I repeat, you can interpret it differently every time, because that is how we all grow. All right, guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I was going to read it by myself, but I thought this was a much better experience, and this conversation has proven to me that it is. And I shall see you all next Saturday, 8 a.m. We will read chapter 3, and let us hope that we can finish it, and we can draw some conclusions out of it. Okay? Thank you so much. Vivek, Tej, Yugu, Wasim, Steve Austin, thank you so much for being here. We shall see you all. We'll meet each other soon next Saturday. Bye. Hari Om.